Hello, this is The Harboring Light. I'm Mary. I give a conservative perspective about the world around me. So my social media links will be provided for you, along with my email, Substack, and buy me a coffee. All those links will be provided for you in this episode. So audio platforms, I'm on Audible, Amazon Music, Spotify for podcasters, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Pandora, iHeartRadio, and I am definitely looking to grow to wherever you enjoy your podcast. I am everywhere on that. Okay, so this episode is about the background of Peter, Paul, and Mary. And then I'm also gonna add in my thoughts on that. So, here we go. Let's dive in. Alright, so I want to give some thoughts about Peter, Paul, and Mary, particularly with the Christian aspect of it. I think it's really interesting having the trio aspect of the Trinity, but even more interesting adding in Peter and Paul. Of course, the lineage of Peter and Paul, the disciples of Jesus. And in that, it's very, with the life and times of Jesus and the disciples, and then going through faith and believing in something that others didn't believe, and then going against the faith and everything else is, I think, by having these names, it helps to symbolize to me the aspect of tuning in to something that you see and you notice and you believe and you feel, but you have questions and doubts with. That goes along with the human condition. And then out of the questions and doubts, you see your path or you see your way. And I think that's really relevant to folk music. So what am I saying by this? What I mean is, folk music knocks down at the door and knocks down through the door, so to speak, and says, hey, this is what I see, this is what I notice, and this is how I feel about these certain things. And I think it's quite interesting. Many times, folk singers, they stand with their testament and what they believe in by going with causes and help supporting causes and everything else to make things better and for humans and humanity. And I think it's very interesting when you get into the aspect of a band, particularly when the lineage of Peter, Paul, and Mary, I think they segue the concepts of the sound of the 60s. So what am I saying by this too? So, in the 60s, my appreciation for music of the 60s and everything else, the sound, particularly when we get bands like Crosby, Still and Nash, which I will talk about later on in the series, and Mamas and the Papas, which I will talk about in this series. I think that they are the sequential sound of the whole idea behind the 60s. The whole idea of the aspects of youth and awareness, and then the awareness of where do I stand in these certain situations of the ups and downs of adulthood where it be, or the ups and downs of cultural changes, where it be war, where it be cultural changes as in the shift in society where women see their place, where it hence leads to the revolt and the sexual revolution, and hence leading to women in their aspects of the idea of how they see themselves in the workplace. And digging deeper into it, from the aspect of a musical point of view, I think it's very interesting when you break down and you get trios, or you get bands, and you get different sense of sounds within the band. Instead of, a solo singer, you get 3, 4, and so on, and they chime in and they give their interpretation of the song, and they give their methodic perspective within the song. So, for instance, with Peter, Paul, and Mary, If I Had a Hammer, the methodically how they would harmonize with each other, but at the same time, the voices within each person singing in that group gave a unique sort of musical awareness of the song. And I think it's something really refreshing to have people who sing differently and have different tones within their voice, but yet at the same time they can unify and come together and hit those notes to where it sounds like one person. It's quite interesting to expand onto that. I remember singing when VH1, Behind the Music, I think it's made a comeback on VH1. I'm not quite sure on that. But anyhow, when I saw the particular episode that I'm referring to is with Chic. And when the ladies of that band, when they were talking about and when they were singing the songs, they would make sure when they would hit the notes, they would mimic each other to sound in unison. And that's a really skilled talent. And that's also remarkable to have that kind of perspective to say that whether it be the creative decision by the band, the producers, or what have you, to say that we need to make our mark in this particular song to sound the same, so we get that unified presence of what we want to represent in this song. And it's really something to say about that. So, all right, so here we go. I'm going to talk about Peter, Paul, and Mary. The background. Okay. Peter, Paul, and Mary. American folk singers at the forefront of the folk music revival of the 1960s, who created a bridge between traditional folk music and later folk rock. The group consists of Peter Yarrow, Paul Stokoe, and Mary Ellen Travels. After meeting in New York City's Greenwich Village, Yarrow, Stokoe, and Travels formed a group in 1961, playing in folk clubs and on college campuses. They built a youthful following with their lyrics, tight harmonies, and spare sound. usually accompanied only by Yarrow and Stokey on her acoustic guitars. With her records and television appearances, they popularized both new and traditional folk songs. And I will go into more depth on that on Friday. Okay, so prominent in the civil rights movement and the struggles against the Vietnam War, Peter, Paul, and Mary included protest songs in their repertoire. They also feature plaintive ballads and children's songs such as Yarrow's Puff, The Magic Dragon, and I'll go into depth about that on Friday, which often is mistakenly interpreted as a drug-related song. After splitting up in 1970 to pursue solo careers, the trio reformed to release the album Reunion in 1978. And I'll go into depth on that on Friday. And in 1986, they celebrated their 25th anniversary with a series of concerts and released the album No Easy Walk to Freedom. During the course of their career, Peter, Paul, and Mary received 5 Grammy Awards, with multiple wins for If I Had a Hammer in 1962 and Blowing in the Wind in 1963. Their 1967 recording of Leaving on a Jet Plane, written by John Denver, became a #1 hit in 1969. They also earned a Grammy for the children's recording, Peter, Paul, and Mommy, in 1969. Their final studio album, In These Times, appeared in 2003. All right, I want to end with some more thoughts. So I think it's very interesting to see talking about the revival of folk music in the 60s and the conscious revival of that, and Peter, Paul, and Mary being the forefront of that, and then it all seeping into rock folk. All these interesting artists came out of that. The Byrds, even Rolling Stones, and going on into the 80s with Van Halen, with the conscious songs about, particularly when Sammy Hagar was the frontman, so to speak, for the band, talking about these conscience thoughts of human empathy on what they go through. For instance, right now, talking about the plagues and the sad irony that people face when they love someone and they're not there, and the consciousness of someone who thinks that they don't care but they actually care. And those are some of the examples of that song, but it really goes in depth about these things. And the conscious effort that Peter, Paul, and Mary made with their revival of folk music is very interesting in a way that it was so commercially successful. It taps into the ideas that if it's said and it's given the right outlet, people are open to hearing about things that have social grounds, particularly speaking the social realities of what people face. And I think that's a difference between making people feel guilty about things versus making people understand things in a different way. So this is what I'm saying. So with Peter, Paul, and Mary, they were very delicate with the subject matter that they would say, and to a ways, some point of explaining things as if, from my point of view, if you're talking to a friend, a loved one, someone with meaning, instead of just so on and so forth, with the bad rap of burying things down or shoving things down someone's throat and saying, here, you are guilty of this, you must listen to me. And that's defeated of the purpose of trying to unite people to make changes, to make things better. And also to tie into the social and historical background that Peter, Paul, and Mary were living in. For instance, making a vocal statement and make a vocal point of being a part of the civil rights movement, and then the Vietnam War, and then these two impactful events really stood the test of time in the turning points of how people view their sense of reality of what's comfortable and what's not comfortable. So, for instance, the civil rights movement, the whole reason behind that was just this. We are people, we are married, and we should have the same rights as everybody else. And we want to have our freedoms that we are granted, and no one should tear that down. And it's very interesting, it's very different than correlating to, unfortunately, some of the thought processes of today, that things are given to you or you're owed something. And it's a far cry from what the civil rights movement and the people of this movement were saying. They just, with stern beliefs and calm, and some of them weren't calm, let's go on to the reality of Malcolm X. But needless to say, there's every caveat in anything. But needless to say, we stand our ground and we remember our purpose. We can move towards our goals. And the harmony of different races coming together for that purpose is really something remarkable to remember and to think about in the consciousness of today. And so I want to end on Vietnam War and then wrap everything up. And it's very interesting, they bringing awareness and bringing their stands towards the Vietnam War, because my point of view of it and the historical aspects of it as a pointless war. And also I have this point of view that, not everything can be solved by intervention or coming in. Some things have to be left alone and worked out within the realms of the people that are going through these conflicts. And, it's nice to want to step in, from the American point of view, want to step in and help, but not everything can be helped. And a lot of just uncalled for bloodshed can happen from this, and it changes the depiction and the realities of war, and I think it distorts the noble aspects of wanting to be served for your country and wanting to be have enough courage to stand forefront and to protect liberties. And I think sometimes it's better left to step back and think about things and process things instead of act. And for Peter, Paul, and Mary to be on the conscience level of bringing awareness to this is really something to say about it, because it's a lot of people being, from a judicial point of view, being punished for it. And teenagers standing, I'm referring to the historical point of wearing black bands in school as a protest against it being no more, and all of these things. And it just proves the point, I think, that once you have a conscious awareness of where you stand and where you put your line in the sand, things of how you maneuver in life start to change. And it's very interesting that Peter, Paul, and Mary melded all these things into their music and to the consciousness of the masses, the mass media, and the masses, and the sense. Alright, so this reaches the end of the Harboring Light. And of course, on Wednesday, I'm going to relay and talk about artists I think hone on the same sort of presence in the presentation of Peter, Paul, and Mary. And then on Friday, I'm going to wrap everything up, dive in and seep in more on their music. And of course, your feedback is very, very important. So reach out to me through email, through X, through Substack. And there you go. Tune in, turn up, and definitely take care. Bye-bye now.